This is Marlene Gibb with What Do You Do? And today we're at a private residence in Sierra Madre with my guest, John Johnson. And John, what do you do?
Thank you, Marlene, for inviting me today. What I do is build and construct and plant raised bed gardens for schools and the general public alike.
And how did you get interested in this? Tell us your story, because you have an interesting story.
Well, it all started when I was about 50 years ago. I had 3 brothers and a sister, and my duty was to till the earth and get the garden ready for planting every year. So I've been involved in gardening all my life. I had an older brother that was a horticulturist, a biologist, and an ecologist. He was living in Michigan and myself in California. So we have 2 different climate extremes. And I got him interested in the raised bed system, and he's tried it. And we used to have conversations of how to grow the best kinds of foods and fruits and vegetables. That's why I have an interest in raised bed gardens, is to make good, wholesome produce effectively and efficiently as possible using organic materials, and that has raised my health up as well as my community.
Okay, let's start. What is a raised bed? Let's talk about the beds, because if the audience doesn't know anything about any, let's say we're all small and little and we don't know anything. So start with the beds, start with your whole philosophy of what you do.
There's 2 basic kinds of gardens, and one is the soil-based and one is an organic material-based. Okay. And basically, most people are most familiar with the soil-based, where you see in farm fields where they have rows of corn and rows of cotton and rows of tomatoes and rows of carrots. That is all soil-based gardening. Now, what occurs in this environment is that the soil needs to be raised up to about 70 degrees to really start to grow plants. Okay. What the raised bed does is it's a frame that you either put soil or organic material in to grow your vegetables. This actually heats up faster than the surrounding earth.
Okay.
Okay. That's one of the benefits of raised beds, is that you get an earlier start on your gardening.
Okay.
All right. So when the soil gets up to 70, the plants take off really well and they're strong and healthy. The problem with dirt is that it compacts, squeezing out the air and turning into like mud puddles, in essence, after a period of time. And so you have to till the soil or turn the soil over, and that results in bringing all the good bacteria and fungus out to the air, which they'll turn around and bloom and blow away, and you lose your immune system for your plants doing that. So you want to stay away from tilling the soil.
Okay, all right. Okay, so we're staying away from tilling the soil.
So when you build your ecosystem in there, what you want to do is have a lot of organic material. This does a lot of things. It provides food for the plants. It also stimulates their immune system to ward off bugs and insects, where soil doesn't do that. You have to have the organic material in there to make things happen.
All right, when people go and they go to the garden stores, because most people aren't as familiar with what you do, right? They're used to going to the garden store and getting fertilizer to improve their soil.
Yes.
That's typical, right?
True.
Okay, so with you're saying to take the organic materials like eggs and anything that you can recycle.
Basically, I think you're referring to mostly is compost.
Compost.
Okay. Compost is plant material that's breaking down into smaller and smaller particles, and you add ingredients to it like eggshells for the calcium and various other organic food stocks. And when you do that, what happens is that you enrich the soil with the proper elements or food sources like nitrogen and potassium and calcium. That will make the plants stimulate to grow. Okay. One of the biggest things is what we deal with fertilizers is that when you put it in the soil, it has a propensity to leach down through the soil. It's only a temporary.
So it's just a Band-Aid.
Well, it's a temporary feeding system. because it doesn't last in the soil. When you water it, it perks down, gets into the water table. So one of the things you really want to do when you're gardening is maintain these nutrients as long as possible around the plants.
Okay.
For their absorption. Soil in its natural form doesn't have anything to hold it. It doesn't want to absorb water, it doesn't want to absorb nutrients, because basically you're dealing with sand, clay, rock, basically. And there's no organic material to absorb the water, absorb the nutrients, and hold them inside the soil base, so it just trickles down, like rain coming off the side of your house. Okay. In my version of it, I use a totally organic material. I use straw, alfalfa, and compost. And for example, a bale of straw can hold up to 270 pounds of water.
Oh yeah, I read your blog, yeah.
Okay, so when you look at something like that, what does that translate into? If the material itself is holding the water and not going into the ground and dissipating out, that means you're only watering once a week, because you have a huge like sponge, and it's organic. And the wonderful thing about it is that it breaks down into plant food.
So everything is recycled.
Right, and everything is replenishable. It's not like we're taking materials out of our ecosystem and putting it into this garden, and it can never be recaptured again or reproduced again or manufactured again. So what we're using is materials that can always be grown, processed, and put in your garden to make it grow very well.
These bales in the wooden frames, how long do they hold? I mean, do they last a month, 2 weeks, 3 weeks?
What's the life cycle for a bale of straw?
The life cycle, yeah.
Well,
or alfalfa. That's together, right?
Right. First you have a layer of alfalfa, then you have a huge layer of straw, and then the compost on top. It depends on what kind of feeding plants that you have in there, but generally I would say the raised beds I make are more to 24 to 30 inches high. So
that's about this high.
That's closer to 30. It's no higher than the height of a desk. Okay. So you can sit on the edge of it and plant as well as harvest. And that gives me at least a bale of, let's say, we'll take an example of a 4x4 bed, 4 feet by 4 feet. We'll have a bale of alfalfa, 2 bales of straw, and about 5 or 6 inches of compost. All right. Generally, that'll take probably 6-7 months to be consumed by the plants that you put in there, and you'll have to recharge it again. Most likely you'll have to recharge this bed several times before it all turns into a material called humus. And humus is basically just plant food. It's not alive, okay? It's a material that holds the nitrogen and the phosphorus and the potassium and the calcium and all these things that are found in this material. It's coarse grain, so the water moves through it and populates the material, and it can hold up to 80% of water. So you're still getting this water retention system that's really crucial to wanting to take the weekend off and go somewhere, because, gee, I'd have to water my garden if I didn't. So this will hold the water just like the straw and alfalfa do. But once you've accumulated this humus, the plants are going to grow really well and strong. It's a material that the roots just plunge into, expand rapidly, absorb the nutrients, and make the plants grow healthy and strong from the bottom up. It's just like raising a child. You know, if you give them good food, you give them good nutrients, you provide them a good environment, they'll grow up generally into a good person. So if we apply our lifelong learning systems to what we do organically in a garden, we're going to be very successful.
Okay, so we're down at the bottom now. I'm just trying to visualize this, and we've got the plants. When do we come in 7 months later and put a whole new bale in?
Well, generally you won't need to put a whole new bale in.
So we just
add enough to fill it back up.
Okay.
So it all breaks down into smaller and smaller particles, and that will allow us to build the humus. That's actually all plant material.
And that stays.
That stays. So you leave that there.
So humus, every time it breaks down, you get more humus.
That's true.
At the bottom, right?
Yeah, and it eventually fills up the whole container.
Then what do you do with the humus when you still need the alfalfa and the...
No, once it's filled up, you just use some organic fertilizers if you need to amend it. A little straw on top helps with the water retention at the surface. But you'll probably be pulling it out to utilize it in starter plants when you grow your seeds, and want to start early. So you just pull some of your humus out and you start your seeds in that, and then you have a good root system established. So when you transplant them, they just take right off.